Konrad Lorenz, the Nobel Prize winner in 1973, compared the characteristics of hunting with photography. According to Lorenz, it is an expression of the basic hunting instinct for the hunter as well as for the photographer. A person who shares both these interests soon notices the similarities. The essential difference lies in the end result. The hunter strives for a roast on the table, the photographer an attractive picture. Regardless of whether the weapon is a camera or a gun, the experience is just as exciting. Hunting is man's oldest tradition and occupation. No activity, apart from the reproductive instinct, has engaged man to the same extent. Originally, man's main diet was plants and vegetation, but he gradually became a hunter and carnivore. During the greater part of the several million years man has walked on the earth, he has been dependent on hunting for his living. Thousands of years ago, nomadic groups of hunters gradually settled and began cultivating the soil. Since then, it can be said that hunting, fishing, and agriculture has provided man with his daily food. During the early history of man, all members in the small communities were engaged in securing food. Nowadays, the securing of food is as simple as a visit to the supermarket. The present-day situation has deprived man of part of his ancient behavior pattern. Gone is the excitement of the hunt, the thrill of the drive, the cunning trapping, the planning, and the comradeship between the members of the hunting party. When the modern man goes to the store to buy food, he will, unlike his predecessors, come home with both meat and vegetables. In today's society, man is often a tracker without a quarry, a beater without anything to pursue. For many men, work replaces the role of hunting, with maneuvers and cunning plans, tactics, and traps. Modern man makes plans for business campaigns. He places bait in large cities and sits on all male committees, which are a substitute for the old hunting parties. By taking risks and striving for conquests, he succeeds in reliving the old thrill of the hunt in the symbolism of the business world. The English behavioral scientist Desmond Morris states that sociologically, we have not progressed from the collecting and hunting stage. Sports activities are, for example, modified forms of hunting behavior. From a biological point of view, today's soccer player resembles a member of a camouflage-dressed hunting party. According to Morris, soccer includes many of the behavioral patterns that can be found in hunting. There is the struggle, the competitiveness, and there is the goal to be defeated or win. Instead of outwitting the deer, it is the opposing team that must be outwitted. A goal is the decisive blow. Wildlife is a regenerating resource which has always been exploited by man. In the same way as people fish or pick berries and mushrooms, we cull or hunt the surplus animals from our wild herds. Unfortunately, man is not known for always exploiting natural resources wisely. Forests have been damaged by reckless cutting, the soil impoverished, and fresh water has become more precious every year. In the past, the hunter has also been guilty of overtaxing, and with certain species, even to the point of extinction. Increased understanding of the interplay in nature, the environmental needs of wildlife, and the fundamental principles for long-term and wise exploitation of this natural resource has resulted in responsible management of wild herds by both hunters and landowners. Wildlife conservation, where hunting is an integrated part, is also nature preservation. Hunting is a part of the total cycle. Man shoots a moose, the marten kills a blackcock. Even the capercaillie can appear on the menu of the marten. The fox is a large consumer of roe deer fawns. Man is a part of the biological diversity and one of the consumers at the top of the nutrition chain. Early forms of hunting where traps or inferior and ineffective weapons were used are not allowed today. This is mostly due to the initiative of hunters themselves. It is popular to say that today's hunter pursues a humane form of hunting. This is contradictory when the goal of the hunt is to kill the animal. However, this statement attempts to point out that today's hunter's observance of hunting methods and techniques creates as little suffering as possible for the animal.
Gick det bra vägen?
Humility is the hunter's relation to nature in its entirety. The hunter has the opportunity of hunting wildlife in a nature where man also belongs. Respect for wildlife. Wild animals are considered to be living beings and not pieces of meat. They have feelings and are able to feel pain. Responsibility means that the hunt should be carried out in an ethical manner and in accordance with current laws. This responsibility includes tracking down injured animals and putting them out of their misery. There is no avoiding the fact that hunters wound wild animals. The hunter should, therefore, always consider his own proficiency within different hunting areas. Hunting has long been a time-honored tradition. Nomadic hunters and fishing groups followed the regression of the inland ice and settled further north. They made their living from hunting and fishing, and other foods which could be picked and eaten. On the tundra and in the forests, moose and reindeer roamed wild. The moose was then, as it is now, one of the most important game. Aurochs and the European bison were also hunted at that time. The red deer that we see today are descendants of the Irish great deer. Then, as now, the muskox wandered on the tundra in the north. Ancient hunters were experts at utilizing all parts of the animals they killed. The furs and skins were used for clothes and bones for weapons. When larger game were hunted, it was essential that several hunters coordinated their efforts in order to succeed. Weapons included cudgels, stones, bones and arrows, and various types of spears. Archaeological technicians have manufactured bows and arrows of the same material and design as they were believed to have been used several thousand years ago. They were the result of thousands of years of development. Test shoots on wild boars using arrows with flint points have been made, and were effective in the killing of average-sized pigs. Fire, which we easily take for granted, was invaluable to our ancestors. Fire provided warmth and made cooking possible. It kept predators away at night and was also a method of signaling. Pits were once used for hunting moose until they were forbidden. The pits were several meters deep and were often a part of a system of pits dug in a row. They were set out in areas where the animals were known to pass. It would take several thousand years before it became known to man, through the Bible, that he held a position of predominance over the animals on the land, the birds in the sky, and the fish in the sea. Stone Age man probably saw animals as being like himself, leading the same struggle for existence, as well as a food source. He observed that animals used the same methods as man to survive: agility, strength, cunning, and tricks. Hunting was a task which involved the whole family. The men hunted the larger prey, and the women and children set traps and caught small game and fish. Throughout history, man seems to have experienced a sense of harmony between nature and himself, a feeling which is reflected in all religions and beliefs. The life of the Stone Age man revolved around hunting. Mighty natural powers such as thunder, lightning, storms, and tempests affected man not only physically, but also emotionally. Rock carvings documented and preserved the events of that time. The hunter also believed that wildlife was protected by spirits which threatened the hunter. As protection, the hunter often wore different lucky charms from the animal world. For example, the bear was considered a supernatural being with enormous powers. Who then is this person who hunts? Despite his often civilized appearance, one can maintain that man is just a predator. In contrast to other predators, man has a unique ability to plan and organize his hunt. Different ecological and biological factors maintain the balance between other predators and their quarry. If man restricts his hunting in any way, he does it of his own free will. Man also has a special status compared to other predators. Normally, he is physically inferior, not only to other beasts of prey, but also to his quarries. However, few predators can measure up to man as a whole. If one imagined a sports competition with 15 kilometers running and 1,000 meters swimming, man would be quite successful in comparison with most other animals. If one also included 25-meter diving and tree climbing, man would do even better by comparison. Man's hearing, vision, and smell are by themselves poorly developed compared with other predators. But man is still the most effective predator. With his brain and technological development, he is fully capable of annihilating other species, which has happened. During thousands of years, and today at an accelerated pace, valuable environments have been destroyed, and the biological variety has decreased as a result of human influence. Hunting is no exception. With the swift expansion and growth of the human population, valuable environments and species disappear every day. It is therefore important that constant efforts are made in what we call environmental management, and that hunters can in some way contribute to the preservation of natural environments and wild species. An oil well, when emptied, will never fill up again. A copper mine from which 1 single gram of ore has been mined has forever lost a resource. Wildlife, on the other hand, is a regenerating natural resource, which when correctly managed will provide a long-term yield of meat and leather, and can also provide excellent opportunities for nature experiences, recreation, and relaxation. Wildlife management has several different goals. At times the purpose is to promote a certain species and to increase the overall number of animals. Wildlife management is also important to help wild species survive extreme weather conditions. A hard winter can, for example, be disastrous for deer. Wildlife management can also be used to create recreational opportunities, not just for the hunter, but for people who study animals, ornithologists, photographers, and other persons interested in nature. The growth of the wild species must be adapted to public and individual interests. When the number of moose becomes too many, resulting in unacceptable damage to forests, crops, or traffic, and when other preventative measures have not helped, the hunting quota must be increased. The protection of man's interests is important when lynx kill too many roe deer or livestock. Competition with other predators for the most valuable quarry or domestic livestock has always been a reason for man to hunt predatory animals. Even in other situations where man's interests are threatened, such as when beavers build dams, damaging roads and railway embankments, man tries to eliminate the wild animal causing the damage. Our opinion regarding the importance of the development of wild species has changed during the years. It was a common belief during the first half of the 20th century that all beasts of prey should be shot, because they were competitors for man's game. Today, the attitudes toward predators has changed, and most people consider that we should have robust, controlled species of predators. When wild species become overpopulated, sickness can spread fast, and the supply of food can run short when the number of animals is greater than their environment can support. Foxes with mange should be destroyed in order to reduce the risk of contamination and to shorten the suffering of the fox. During recent years, it has become increasingly important to make use of the animal skins. The leather is used not only for furniture, but even within the clothing industry. For example, articles of clothing are being manufactured from moose to a greater extent today. This method of utilizing a resource is not any different from manufacturing leather products from livestock. Hunting is intimately linked to modern wildlife and forestry research. Today, researchers and hunters work together, and newly acquired knowledge is put to good use. To try to ignore the role of man as hunter throughout history would be to deny his origins. Hunting was once a prerequisite for the survival of the species. Hunting has, to a large extent, characterized man, and the hunting instinct is present in each and every one of us. The swift expansion and growth of man will make hunting important in the future. Man has today adopted the role that other predators had earlier. We regulate most of the wild species to suit our needs. The balance, which was present in nature when man used only stones and cudgels as weapons, is just a pale memory. What is it that makes a young person start hunting? Earlier, the interest in hunting was passed from father to son. Even today, youths may acquire experience of wildlife and forests during their childhood. Many of today's new hunters come from larger or smaller communities and have had little or no experience of forests and wildlife as they begin hunting. Hunting today is a widespread popular movement, firmly established in society. In the world of hunting, it is primarily the hunter's skill as a hunter which are respected and valued. This often leads to a rearrangement of the social structure. The status the hunters have in their working life may not reflect the positions they are given within the hunting team. Hunting is also used today for marketing and representation within trade and industry. In order to achieve humility, respect, and responsibility within hunting, today's hunters must also gain experience the hard way. The hunting examination is a prerequisite for a hunter to receive a license to carry firearms and is his first step into the world of hunting. Respect for all living things, humans and animals, is for most people fundamental. Even for the hunter, the actual killing can create a conflict. No hunter experiences the sight of a dying animal as positive, but the killing of the quarry is still the ultimate purpose of hunting. The expression hunting for pleasure is sometimes used for an activity which involves the killing of an animal for pleasure and not out of necessity. The term has acquired a negative meaning, unfortunately because it is a question of just that. The hunter experiences hunting as exciting and fascinating, and if you like, pleasurable. Hunting includes many values, where the actual killing or the shot is the ultimate moment of excitement, but also the moment which demands the greatest responsibility. There is also a satisfaction in being a successful predator when the hunt is over and the quarry is down. The angler who hooks an old pike or the berry picker with a full basket all experience the same feeling of satisfaction. A person who is dependent on hunting for his subsistence, as with Eskimos or certain races on the Siberian tundra, also finds a pleasure in hunting, but is not considered a pleasure hunter. Hunting was often a dangerous activity for our hunting ancestors. As weapons, the hunters had cudgels, stones, bows and arrows, or spears which did not kill the quarry outright. Hunting was exciting in that it was often perilous. Today, with modern rifles, even bear hunting is seldom dangerous, but can be experienced as very exciting, with a rush of adrenaline and fast pulse rate. As all hunting is undeniably linked with killing, there will always be people who do not approve of hunting for ethical reasons. One easily forgets that hunting is a part of a superior system in nature, which includes both life and death. The actual action of killing is not then the essential factor, but how the killing is done. What is it about hunting that makes some of today's city dwellers experience a feeling of uneasiness? One contributing factor is ignorance. Many live in a city environment with little or no contact with the countryside where hunting is pursued. What does a normal hunting situation look like? Naturally, the hunter strives after a direct, fatal shot. A shot in the lung region will puncture large blood vessels, and masses of blood collect in the cavity of the chest. The supply of oxygen to the blood will cease. The lungs collapse, and blood pressure falls. The heart will continue to beat for a few more minutes, and the animal will remain standing a few minutes after being shot. The lack of oxygen to the brain results in unconsciousness, and the animal falls down. The animal is dying and often lies moving its legs until the blood vessels are completely empty of blood. The animal is dead. Human values and feelings naturally affect the hunter in his performance. The feelings that a hunter experiences can be joy and sorrow, depending on the outcome of the hunt, as well as satisfaction from the comradeship within the hunting party. However, the hunter does not compare a moose with a roe deer from the aspect of which is the more beautiful. All animals are more or less beautiful, or ugly. Our senses tell us that a wild boar is not as beautiful as a roe deer. Should the animal we consider most beautiful, purely from a subjective point of view, be less exposed to hunting than the ugly? The answer is, of course, no. Biological values should decide whether a wild animal is huntable or not. Many of the values we have as adults come from our childhood. This applies to our relationship to and our feelings for animals. In cartoon series, we often see and experience animals in human form, walking on two legs. It is then understandable that animals are given the same values and feelings that we normally have for people. Children who read Little Red Riding Hood learn to see the wolf as a dangerous animal. In reality, wolves are extremely shy of humans. There is also a tendency that young people, even preschool children, learn that humans are evil and a threat to nature. It is perhaps this attitude that was reflected in a survey where 7 out of 10 children chose to save a drowning dog instead of its master. One reason for this attitude can be all the suffering that is shown in the media. In the early 1980s, feelings and opinions put a stop to a trade with long traditions, the hunting of seals on the ice in the Arctic Ocean. The decision to stop the hunting of seal cubs was based on political and emotional values, and not for biological or ecological reasons. People were upset by the way the cubs were killed. The seal cub was hit on the head with a seal pike and killed. The campaign prevented fishermen and sealers in northern Canada and northern Norway from exploiting the natural resources provided by the seals. Today, seals must be killed by shooting, in accordance with the requirements for all other hunting. These crab-eating seals, just as the Greenland seals, are considered extremely cute. The fact that the seals were considered beautiful, with large dog-like eyes, was reason enough for a mass protest. The experts and seal researchers of today consider the flocks of Greenland seals as huntable. Man has, according to tradition, divided animals into useful animals and vermin. A higher value, both economically and morally, is placed upon useful animals, such as the moose. The hunting of moose is thereby governed by a large number of regulations. These values do not apply to small game and vermin. With regard to vermin, almost all means of extermination are allowed. For example, rats can be poisoned using substances which can involve extreme pain for the animals. A large, valuable wild animal should, according to human standards and legislation, be treated with greater consideration than small game. Hunting has always had a great social importance. The fact that large parts of Sweden are at a standstill during the moose season is just an old phenomenon in modern form. Hunting has also historically meant a wholehearted commitment by the hunters and their families. Many of the customs can, for the uninitiated, seem quite unnecessary, but serve in reality a very important purpose. In Hungary, the person who has shot his first roe deer lies down and his hunting colleagues render symbolic blows over the hunter's back. 3 things are emphasized here. The hunter should be thankful for having the opportunity to hunt a roe deer. He should have respect even for the dead animal, and should promise that he will, in the future, follow existing legislation, both in legal text and in hunting ethics. The tradition on the continent to put a branch in the mouth of the dead game is a way of honoring the fallen animal. In Nordic countries, there are symbolic actions such as a fir twig in the hat of the person who has shot the animal. Since the time man first tamed a wolf cub, the dog, the wolf's successor, has been the constant companion of the hunter. The demands on the dog's capabilities are often great. It should be able to calmly pursue a wild animal, fetch small game both on land and in water, and track and indicate the whereabouts of injured animals. It should also function as a family dog. The tracking of wild boars or bears involves the same demands as the tracking of moose. Few dogs have, however, the courage and ability to stop an injured bear or wild boar. Meat production by the breeding of livestock is also a resource used by man. The wildlife resource must also be managed in the right way. A modern expression for this is wise use. Man will in the future become increasingly dependent on all biological production, such as hunting, fishing, agriculture, and forestry. Previously, hunting in the Nordic countries was an occupation for the rural population, or those who worked with agriculture or forestry. A satisfactory hunt is for a living countryside one of the reasons why people often return to live on their family farms. The main reason why hunting in the Nordic countries is respected and honored is that hunting has always been linked to the rural population and the general public. In Central Europe, hunting is deeply rooted in the feudal community, where hunting was primarily carried out by landed gentry and counts. Hunting in Central Europe is therefore under much harder criticism than in the Nordic countries. A capercaillie mating ground within a less productive forest is always worth preserving. A capercaillie mating ground on good forest land can also, in certain cases, be protected with the right knowledge and planning. Forests or agricultural areas with varied selection of food, protection, and water are always invaluable for all animal species. Today, forests are valued not purely for the value of their timber, but also from the point of view of hunting and the pure recreational value created by robust herds of wild animals. In principle, a parallel can be drawn between the production goals and the environmental goals in present-day forestry. Visits and trips to the forests, woods, and countryside, and its wildlife have become an extremely important factor in recreational activities. Comprehensive discussions will be held in the future on how best to promote the natural resources available in the forests. Where is modern technology leading? Should one allow the most effective weapon to enable the swiftest possible kill? Should today's hunting also maintain a certain measure of fair play? Nowadays, there are weapons with heat-sensitive sights and laser sights, where the hunter does not even have to aim particularly well to hit the target. If the hunter is unsure of the distance to the quarry, the laser sight will show the exact distance. Some of these techniques are not permitted for today's hunting. A great deal of the pleasure and excitement of hunting will, even in the future, lie in the challenge of the hunter to outwit the game. If the technology is too sophisticated, man will be too superior, and much of the excitement will be lost. Just as in sporting activities, the hunter also desires a certain measure of fair play. From this aspect, the hunt which is carried out on seal cubs is less acceptable. A moose, on the other hand, has a greater chance of surviving the hunt. It has now become increasingly popular to use simple hunting equipment, such as bows and arrows, in the countries where this is permitted. Hunting with bows and arrows demands more of the hunter than a firearm. Similar expressions for what we call fair play are also used within fishing, where thin fishing lines make the challenge greater. Another factor is that man, according to present-day physiologists, is physically inferior to ancient hunters. Human beings are both heavier and weaker, and thereby less agile in natural terrain than earlier. In 100 years' time, a hunter perhaps may need a more effective weapon to be able to hunt successfully. Different values are also placed on the hunter depending on which tribe, race, or community he belongs to. An Eskimo in northern Canada, living in an Eskimo village with all the modern comforts, can pursue his hunting with a completely different kind of respect from city folk than a hunting city dweller. As we have seen, a common attitude in this context is that commercial hunting is motivated, while hunting for pleasure is not. The type of hunting pursued by a city dweller, where the purpose is to kill, take charge, and eat the quarry, is still much more acceptable than if the purpose is to win a trophy. In reality, as this film has shown, all hunting is more or less a type of commercial hunting, in that we promote a regenerating resource. All hunting is more or less linked to the excitement and enthusiasm of the hunter, that is to say, a form of pleasure. The important factor is not who is hunting, whether he is an Eskimo or city dweller. The important factor is how the hunt is carried out. People in today's society live to a greater extent in larger urban communities, and thereby have less contact with wildlife and nature. Through books, films, and TV, man is led into the world of zoology. He sees paintings and illustrations of animals and admires their beauty. He devotes his time to diving and bird watching and goes on camera safaris. In this way, he shows his interest in the animal world, a world he once was a part of, and which meant life or death as a hunter or primitive cultivator. Is the hunter in danger of extinction in Europe? Will the hunters of the future consist only of a team of professional hunters? How can we cooperate to ensure that the land will suffice for the hunters, foresters, and other persons interested in recreational activities? Changes in the landscape through increased urbanization will, among other things, demand greater investments for wildlife. Cooperation between hunters, landowners, representatives from environmental management, forestry, and public authorities is of great importance in the future. Increased cooperation within environmental management will favor wildlife in the future, and thereby both the hunter and nature lovers in general. During 99.9% of the time which man has used some form of tool, stone, wood, and bone have been the most important material. It is only during the last 0.1% of that time that iron and other materials have been used. Man has, during millions of years, been characterized by a life as a hunter, fisher, and collector. It is not so strange that the man of today sometimes feels a little unfamiliar with his modern surroundings, because deep down inside, man is still a hunter.
Deep the ditch and very muddy, and the time seems very long. Gone the sunset, wild and ruddy, the west roars a song, and the windy twilight's falling, and it's lonesome as can be, ere you hear the wild geese calling off the cold, wet sea. Yes, 'tis lonesome in the ditches, and the only one who likes it is a black, wet dog. He's a twitch to hear the wicker of the pinions down the sky. Ah, you hardly would suppose so much comfort and affection in the cold, wet hills. Hark the gaggle, hop the gun, moving fast from left to right. Fetch him, boy, and we'll be done then. Two's enough tonight. Leave the shadows to their sinking. It's yourself that will be thinking of your hot, wet tea.